to solve these mysteries, to solve them for the good of all men, and to become the world's leading spacefaring nation. We set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won, and they must be won and used for the progress of all people.
Now they're blooming. Beautiful. Beautiful. There they are. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Our leadership in science and industry, our hopes for peace and security, our obligations to ourselves as well as others, all require us to make this effort.
Okay, you just cut out, Charlie. We understand that it's looking great.
This is much more serious and much more important for the future of mankind than just a plain exploit, a technical or technological exploit.
This is a more subdued surface over here than going towards South Ray. Oh, spectacular. Just spectacular. Okay, you just
What mankind sees in the exploration of space is his first chance at immortality since he invented religion.
got about gets it. Hello, Apollo 11. Houston, Goldstone says that TV looks really great. 5 by. Copy 11. It looks good on the monitor as far as the f-stop goes, therefore we just assume it's okay, Goldstone. Okay, you just cut out, Charlie. We understand that it's looking great. We'll leave it the way it is and wait for you to come back on. All right, how do you read me now, over? 5-5. Okay, my comments were from Goldstone that they see no white spots as we saw in 10. Looks like the AGC's working real well. The F-22 looks good, over. Okay, very good. Well, we shut out the sun coming in some of the other windows into the spacecraft, so it's looking through the number 1 window, and there isn't any reflected light right now, so it ought to be a pretty good picture. Roger.
Building the first nuclear bomb during the early to mid-1940s involved 129,500 people over a 3-year period. Yet the secret did not get out. An old reel received by mistake. It contains the raw or unedited footage of the crew of Apollo 11, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin Jr. and Neil Armstrong, staging part of their mission for nearly an hour in living color, with exceptionally clear behind-the-scenes audio of conversations discussing the techniques used to achieve a disingenuous picture depicting the Earth at a distance, in order to falsely demonstrate their far journey from it and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. It cannot be misconstrued that this staging was done for some other reason prior to the mission, for the reel itself is slated and dated July 18th, 19th and 20th, 1969, the very days of the mission when they were said to be approaching and achieving lunar orbit. Furthermore, it is apparent they are in genuine zero gravity aboard the actual spacecraft, necessary to convince the mass media of their authenticity, just not any further than Earth orbit, as you will see.
Apollo 11, Houston, appears to us that we're seeing a view from outside, plus a little of the inside. It appears you've taken the camera away from the left window. Now, over.
That's correct. We're moving it back and reconfiguring for interior lighting.
Roger. We can still see the Earth through the left window, and it appears that we can see a floodlight off to the left, either that or some sun shafting through the hatch window. It's a floodlight. Now we're coming in. Can't quite make out who that hatch. That's Big Mike Collins there.
Well, you got a little bit of... Yeah, hello there, sports fans. You got a little bit of me, plus Neil's in the center couch, and Buzz is doing the camera work this time.
Roger. It's a little dark now, 11. Maybe a bigger f-stop might help.
Yeah, that's in work.
It's getting a lot better now, 11. Mike, you coming in fine by. I got a good...
Well, I put on a coat and tie if I'd known about this ahead of time.
Is Buzz holding your cue cards for you, over?
Cue cards have a no. We have no intention of competing with the professionals, believe me.
The Commander Armstrong. When you Buzz, when you take the camera over towards the window with the sun shafting through it, send to blank it out, though.
This take was never used. As they perfected the shot, a crescent-shaped piece of black material was inset slightly into the window to create the illusion of the Earth's terminator line dividing night and day. It is uncannily convincing. During this segment, intended to be edited and played back later for the worldwide television audience, dated July 18, 1969, Neil Armstrong condemns himself as he states that he is 130,000 miles out, or halfway to the moon, as the NASA flight log also states on this date, when he is in reality in low Earth orbit of a few hundred miles.
Hi, Roger. Houston, Apollo 11. Calling in from about 130,000 miles out.
Here they discuss that these television transmissions were in fact not broadcast live as everyone believed. They were first screened and edited for playback later.
Roger, Neil. We just wanted a narrative such that we can, when we get to playback, we can sort of correlate what we're seeing. Thank you very much.
Well, we shut out the sun coming in some of the other windows into the spacecraft, so it's looking through the number one window, and there isn't any reflected light.
The reason this was done is so that the truth of the matter would not be revealed. Though the federal government would have you believe that this is a view of Earth from a distance out of the spacecraft's window as it nears the moon, it is not. What they have ingeniously done is placed the camera at the back of the spacecraft and centered the lens on a circular window in the foreground, outside of which it is completely filled with the Earth in low orbit.
We only have one window that has a view of the Earth, and it's filled up with the TV camera. South America becomes invisible just off beyond the Terminator or inside the shadow.
This is a segment that they believed wasn't even being recorded, much less suitable for broadcast, for the lens was being zoomed out and the scene was being changed to that of an interior of the astronauts at work, and apparently the stop button popped back up on the recorder without notice. Here is the diffused work light that they used to see camera controls, but not throw light onto the spacecraft's wall. Here they remove part of the crescent insert. Finally, the iris is opened up and you can see the real location of the camera and the very bright and near Earth out the window. Here is the slate for the 19th of July, and the same shot of trickery on the 19th of July, and then the 20th, and the same misleading shot on the 20th. Later that evening, they were said to be walking on the moon. How can this be when they were in Earth orbit only 9 hours earlier, and the moon is some 3 days' journey away? Furthermore, if they genuinely went to the moon, why would they be faking any part of it? Why this trickery with the window? By faking being halfway to the moon, it becomes apparent that they did so because they could not even go halfway. It thus confirms that the stumbling block to their success was the lethal radiation of the Van Allen radiation belts. Since the same equipment was used on the subsequent missions in the 40 months that followed, none of them could have gone to the moon. They only increased their proficiency at staging them.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
Orion is getting ready to launch. My name is Kelly Smith, and I work on navigation and guidance for Orion. Orion is NASA's next-generation spacecraft. Built with versatility in mind, it can take astronauts deeper into space than we've ever gone before, to an asteroid or even onto Mars. For these missions, Orion has to be one tough spacecraft, withstanding high speeds, searing temperatures, and extreme radiation. Before we can send astronauts into space on Orion, we have to test all of its systems. And there's only one way to know if we got it right: fly it in space. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. For this flight, it's time to head home. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. We don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to. But we destroyed that technology.
We must solve these challenges. Space.
The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
And what comes after the International Space Station once its mission is over? How do we ensure the presence of humans in space?
Well, that's a great question. The plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually. That's the farthest that we can go.
The kinds of technologies that we're testing out on Space Station are definitely helping us with our goals of going beyond low Earth orbit.
Early in the next decade, the set of crewed flights will test and prove the systems required for exploration beyond low Earth orbit.
Where we're going forward with exploration, I think humans are naturally driven to do this, and this is really the beginning, I think, of human beings leaving low Earth orbit. I certainly plan on being around to see that.
Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin finally touched down on a landscape obscured by dust stirred up by the vehicle's thrusters.
Contact light. Okay, engine stop. APA at a descent. Both control, both auto descent and Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. Okay, we can verify the position, the opening I ought to have on the camera. Stand by. Okay, we can verify the position, the opening I ought to have on the camera. Stand by. Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now. Neil, we can see you coming.
Okay, I just checked. Getting back up to that first step. That isn't collapsed too far, but it's adequate to get back up.
Roger, we copy.
It's a pretty good little jump. I'm at the foot of the ladder. The limb footbeds are only depressed in the surface about 1 or 2 inches, although the surface appears to be very, very fine-grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Tell me if you got a picture, Houston.
Well, we've got a beautiful picture, Neil.
Okay, I'm going to move it.
From an analytical standpoint, photographic anomalies have to be sought out with an understanding of lighting and shadows. The most straightforward is simple. When objects are lit solely by the sun, as all the scenes on the moon were said to be, after all, lighting equipment was not only impractical, it was unnecessary in bright sunlight, then all shadows, regardless of the landscape, will run parallel with one another and never intersect, as shown by this example. It is clear that these scenes were lit with artificial light. These shadows, which are cast at different angles, are evidence that a second light source is being used. In addition, the sun would not cause an isolated hotspot like this, only an artificial light would. Again, intersecting shadows and another hotspot. And again. And again. It is simply impossible for this picture to have been taken with sunlight on the moon. Here, the shadows are shown to be as black as pitch. And yet here, completely in a shadow, the astronaut is lit up like a Christmas tree. How can this be?
Taking photographs and seeing what was there.
Oh boy, it's nothing like I want that rock.
In 1/6 gravity, everything would weigh 1/6, or 16.7% of its Earth weight. Writers were speculating on the athletic abilities of men on the moon a long time before the space program and Apollo. They based their calculations on 1/6 gravity, because that's what the scientists told us the gravity on the moon would be. And the public was anticipating some of these spectacular athletic feats when astronauts explored the moon. Do you remember seeing any? None were ever performed, ladies and gentlemen. There just weren't any. And you say, well, they were weighted down with these big, giant, heavy suits. We take a conservative approach in determining the relative jumping ability of astronauts in 1/6 gravity versus Earth gravity. A complicating factor, folks, is the alleged weight of the spacesuits and backpacks worn by the astronauts. Now here's where the fun begins. You see, NASA claimed, it's their own figures. I didn't make this up, and you can check yourself. NASA claimed that the gear weighed 185 pounds. Let me repeat that so that there's no misinterpretation. 185 pounds. Now this is a terribly oppressive weight to carry on the Earth. But folks, it would be no problem whatsoever in 1/6 gravity. That is, assuming that the astronauts weighed 185 pounds and their gear weighed the same. And these are the NASA figures, and the astronauts, all of them, weighed pretty close to that figure. The total combined weight, ladies and gentlemen, in 1/6 gravity would be only 62 pounds. Now just ruminate on that a little bit. If the astronaut weighed 185 pounds, and his entire suit, all of his gear, weighed another 185 pounds, the equivalent combined total weight in 1/6 gravity would be only 62 pounds. And I'm here to tell you I could do amazing things if I weighed 62 pounds anywhere. Anywhere at all. But we didn't see any of that, did we? You see, this is still only 1/3 of an astronaut's body Earth weight, without any gear. Are you beginning to understand? Therefore, the astronauts should have been able to jump vertically far higher than they could on Earth without any burden. And you remember when they were tooling around in that little car and they were spinning their wheels and the dirt was flying up, making a rooster tail? Well, folks, that dirt didn't fly up very high and it didn't stay up in the air. It came down really quick. And according to statistics, dust in a 1/6 gravity atmosphere, in fact, an atmosphere only 2% as dense as Earth's atmosphere, that dust should still be floating around somewhere, shouldn't it? But it didn't. How are we going to explain this?
Okay, when he hits the craters and starts bouncing is when he gets his rooster tail. He makes sharp turns. Hey, that was a good stop. Those wheels just locked. Mark off. There's the big craters there, though, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't know one of those holes.
They want 4 minutes worth, John. That was 1 minute and 5. Maybe you could do it twice more.
Surely.
Okay, turn sharp.
I have no desire to turn sharp. Okay, here's a Sharpie.
Hey, that's great. Man, those things, when those wheels really dig in, John, when you turn is when you get the rooster tail. The suspension system on that thing is fantastic.
That sounds good. We sound like we've probably got enough of the Grand Prix. We're willing to let you go on from here. Call that a Grand Prix.
Okay. Man, that was all 4 wheels off the ground there.
Okay, Max, stop. Okay, I don't want to do that. Okay, excuse me. They say that's a no-no.
It is estimated that in just the first 60 minutes on the Moon, motivated by the tenuous nature of the circumstances, many more exposures could have been expediently taken. Also surprising is the scarcity of photographs of the mission's chief pioneer, Neil Armstrong. The greatest achievement in human history, and of the man whose first step echoed around the world, dawning a new age of scientific enlightenment, there is only one full-body picture of him on the Moon, besides this ghostly reflection. This one, taken by an automatic camera mounted on the side of the lunar module.
Great. I guess you're about the only person around that doesn't have TV coverage of the scene. That's all right, I don't mind a bit. How is the quality of the TV? Oh, it's beautiful, Mike, it really is. Oh, geez, that's great. Is the lighting halfway decent? Yes, indeed. They've got the flag up now, and you can see the stars and stripes on the lunar surface. Beautiful, just beautiful.
some suggest the same artificial background was used when shooting two entirely separate pictures. These two photos seem to have the same mountain backdrop, yet the lunar module is only present in one of them. Seemingly impossible, since the LEM never moved and its base remained even after the mission.
And here again, from the same mission, Apollo 16, we have an astronaut who is about to get up.
Give me a hand. Okay, here we go.
Let me give you a hand, he says.
There goes bags. There goes another bag. Bags. Coming.
Look at it again. The astronaut is getting up with the wire taking the weight, relieving him of 5/6 of the Earth's gravity.
Okay, now this one's right down sun, straight west, and I want to know if you can see an angular rock in the foreground.
Roger, we have a large angular rock in the foreground, and looks like a much smaller rock a couple of inches to the left of it. Over.
floating or dangling effect at the jump salute location.
Neil, this is Houston, radio check, over.
Hi, Roger. Houston, loud and clear.
Roger out.
Loud and clear, Houston.
Roger, Buzz.
I'd like to evaluate the various paces that a person can traveling on the surface. I'd leave them out of your field of view. Is that right now, Houston?
That's affirmative, Buzz. You're in our field of view now.
Hey, John, this is perfect with the limb and the rover and you and Stone Mountain and the old flag. Come on out here and give me a salute. Big Navy salute. Off the ground, on the floor. There we go. Good. Hey, John, this is perfect with the limb and the rover and you and Stone Mountain and the old flag. Come on out here and give me a salute. Big Navy salute. Off the ground, on the floor. There we go. Good.
Young set up an ultraviolet camera to provide the first astronomical observations from the moon. He took pictures of the Earth's upper atmosphere and magnetosphere and their interaction with the solar wind. He also photographed the interstellar gas present throughout space and the ultraviolet halos that appear around galaxies. Astronomers have long wanted a telescope on the moon. Perhaps this experiment would show the moon an ideal base for future astronomical observations.
I don't know. Here's a line that pulled loose. Uh-oh. What line is it? That's the heat flow. Pulled it off. God, sorry. I didn't even know it. I didn't even know it. I don't know. Here's a line that pulled loose. Uh-oh. What line is it? That's the heat flow. Pull it off. God, sorry. I didn't know it. I didn't even know it. Sound doesn't travel too good to vacuum up.
On the moon, the astronauts continued with the other experiments. Young placed a series of sensors in the soil, then fired explosive charges, mapping the lunar subsurface much as geologists on Earth. On the moon, the astronauts continued with the other experiments. Young placed a series of sensors in the soil, then fired explosive charges, mapping the lunar subsurface much as geologists on Earth.
You do have to be, all right, you do have to be rather careful to keep track of where your center of mass is. Sometimes it takes about 2 or 3 paces to make sure that you've got your feet underneath you. And about 2 or 3 or maybe 4. You do have to be, you do have to be rather careful to keep track of
where your center mass is. Time to take about 2 or 3 paces to make sure that you've got your feet underneath you. About 2 or 3, maybe 4.
One of the most spectacular discoveries of the mission.
Look at the size of that beaky. It is a beaky, isn't it?
One of the most spectacular discoveries of the mission.
Look at the size of that beaky. It is a beaky, isn't it? For easy paces can bring you to fairly smooth stop. Direction. Like a football player, you just have to put out to the side and cut a little bit. For easy paces can bring you to fairly smooth stop. Direction. Like a football player, you just have to put out to the side and cut a little bit. If we could see to the bottom, we could say for sure this big black rock is right out of. If we could see to the bottom, we could say for sure this big black rock is right out of the bottom. But my guess from the old photographs is it probably is. Okay, that sounds like a good guess. But my guess from the old photographs is it probably is. Okay, that sounds like a good guess. As far as saying what a sane pace might be, I think one that I'm using now would get rather tiring after several hundred. But this may be a function of the suit as well as lack of gravity force here. As far as saying what a sane pace might be, I think one that I'm using now would get rather tiring after several hundred. But this may be a function of the suit as well as lack of gravity force here. Say again, Houston.
Roger, we'd like to get both of you in the field of view of the camera for a minute.
Roger, we'd like to get both of you in the field of view of the camera for a minute.
Neil and Buzz, the President of the United States is in his office now and would like to say a few words to you. Over.
That would be an honor.
Go ahead, Mr. President. This is Houston out.
Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House. And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you... For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives. And for people all over the world, I am sure they too join with America in recognizing what an immense feat this is. Because of what you have done, the heavens have become a part of man's world. And as you talk to us from the Sea of Tranquility, it inspires us to redouble our efforts to bring peace and tranquility to Earth. For one priceless moment in the whole history of man, all the people on this earth are truly one. One in their pride in what you have done, and one in our prayers that you will return safely to Earth.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a great honor and privilege for us to be here representing not only the United States, but men of peace of all nations, and with interest and a curiosity and with the vision for the future. Honor for us to be able to participate here today.
And thank you very much, and I look forward, all of us look forward to seeing you on the Hornet on Thursday. Look forward to that very much, sir.
But now it was time to head back to their base and close out the EVA.
That's it. We're going home again, jiggity jig.
We're ready for you to come back again to the homes of men on the cool green hills of Earth.
Thank you, Joe. We're ready too. But it's been great.
171 hours and 37 minutes after they had lifted off the planet Earth, Scott and Irwin would lift off its sister planet, accompanied by a musical salute they themselves would provide from a small tape recorder on board.
Good liftoff, automatic. Hey, good smooth ride, Ed. Almost sounds like the wind wrestling, doesn't it? Oh, what a view of the rail, huh? Boulder track coming down into it.
The rendezvous and docking procedures were flawless, right on the money. But their jobs were not over yet.
What a ride, what a ride.
To you, we say, we have only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
He is that layer.
To this day, no one knows the answer to this intriguing question.
Liftoff. We have liftoff, 11:22 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
The 5 engines of the Saturn V's huge first stage were designed to burn through 5 million pounds of liquid oxygen in just 2.5 minutes.
That's a lovely liftoff. That's not bad at all.
And to send the spacecraft up 67 kilometers above the Atlantic Ocean.
The greatest event since the laying of the foundation of the seas, since the origin of the universe itself, since the design and formation of the delicate human eye through which all these things are perceived, was a flying machine with its 2 passengers landing on its closest celestial neighbor and returning from where it came. Perhaps again, God's irony lies somewhere within this great boast of humankind.
There's a simple plaque with 14 names, and those are the names in alphabetical order of all the astronauts and cosmonauts who have died in the pursuit of exploration of space. Near it is a small figure representing a fallen astronaut. We went to the moon as trained observers in order to gather data not only with our instruments on board, but with our minds. And I'd like to quote a statement from Plutarch, which I think expresses our feelings since we've come back. The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be lighted. Thank you.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen. Because there's no gravity. And I'm a diver, scuba diver, and when you get down underneath the water, you're floating. And that's just like in space until you start to move, and then you make waves or...
Zoe, what do you say?
Thank you.
You are very, very welcome. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen.
To the Van Allen belts.
Any ill effects from the Van Allen radiation belts?
No, now I'm not sure we went far enough out to encounter the Van Allen radiation belt. Maybe we did.
Beginning at an altitude of 1,000 miles and extending an additional 25,000 miles, lay lethal bands of radiation called the Van Allen radiation belts. Every space mission in history with humans on board, from both the United States and Soviet Union, from the first in 1961 to the present, has been well below this deadly radiation field. Mercury, Gemini, Soyuz, Skylab, the Space Shuttle, all maintained altitudes well below 1,000 miles. All except Apollo.
I don't know the distance to the Van Allen radiation belt. And if we did, it wasn't a problem. And if we did, it wasn't a problem. If we were going to encounter it, then we would have had to build the spacecraft and the spacesuit to not give humans a problem. And so then we built it that way.
The belts are 1,000 miles to 25,000 miles above the Earth.
Then we went right out through them.
No effects on your cells?
Didn't even know it. I don't think anybody, well, maybe somebody said you went through the radiation belt, but we didn't feel it inside, and we didn't get any, added radiation.
In 1998, the Space Shuttle flew to an altitude of 350 miles, one of its highest altitudes ever, hundreds of miles below the beginning of a field of radiation that was so severe that the astronauts inside of their shielded spacecraft and inside of their shielded spacesuits saw flashes of light with their eyes shut that they described as shooting stars, due to radiation penetrating first the shuttle's shielding, then their spacesuit shielding, then their skulls, and finally the retinas of their closed eyes. As a result, CNN issued the following report noting NASA's unpredicted surprise. The radiation belt surrounding Earth may be more dangerous for spacewalking astronauts than previously believed. Scientists say the phenomena known as the Van Allen belts can spawn killer electrons when the Earth's magnetic field changes. These electrons that are being studied could have an important effect not only on satellites, which has happened in the past, but could also affect the astronauts by creating large doses of radiation that could influence their health. The electrons can penetrate through various materials, including spacesuits, and can pass through, in fact, the walls of the space station, and can create high charges deep inside of these objects.
Any ill effects from the Van Allen radiation belts?
No, now I'm not sure we went far enough out to encounter the Van Allen radiation belt. Maybe we did.
No strange occurrences?
Nothing like that. Pay attention.
No strange occurrences.
Nothing like that.
The space shuttle went to 365 miles a few years ago. Because I worked in news. I saw CNN. They said that the radiation belts surrounding Earth are more dangerous than previously believed because the astronauts saw shooting stars with their eyes closed just when they got within 600.
Radiation belt. Now, I'm not sure we went far enough out to encounter the Van Allen radiation belt. Maybe we did. We saw shooting stars, but they're not shooting stars from with your eyes closed, although they look like it.
Any ill effects from the Van Allen radiation belts?
No. If you're out in space beyond the Van Allen belt, and probably within the Van Allen belt, and close your eyes. Now, I'm not sure we went far enough out to encounter the Van Allen radiation belt. Maybe we did. And just pay attention. You don't notice it unless you pay attention. Well, maybe somebody said you went through the radiation belt, but we didn't feel it inside, and we didn't get any, added radiation. Then all of a sudden you'll see a little flash like a shooting star, except it's like that. There goes one this way. Then one just blossoms. And then not that fast. Maybe you wait 3 minutes or 2 minutes and one goes whoosh. And what's happening is cosmic rays are hitting the back of your eye and exciting those sensors in the back of your eye. So that's what you see. And they got high enough apparently to close it. My guess is in Earth orbit, if you closed your eyes and just paid attention, that you would see them.
The first time they were seen was when they went to 365 miles.
Yes.
That's 650 miles below or away from the radiation.
Yeah, see, it's below. My guess if they just did it tonight. But see, if you're just going to sleep or closing your eyes or it's dark, you don't notice them. But if you'll close your eyes and pay attention, which we had an experiment to do, by the way, then you see them whistling by. Not on our mission, by the way, they hadn't been discovered yet. I saw them one day on the moon. It wasn't dark, and it was kind of dark, and I saw this flash of light, and it looked like it was on the moon, but really it wasn't. It was a flash of light in my eye. Pay attention. You don't notice it unless you pay attention.
We meet at a college noted for knowledge, in a city noted for progress, in a state noted for strength, and we stand in need of all three. For we meet in an hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear, in an age of both knowledge and ignorance. The greater our knowledge increases, the greater our ignorance unfolds. Despite the striking fact that most of the scientists that the world has ever known are alive and working today, despite the fact that this nation's own scientific manpower is doubling every 12 years in a rate of growth more than 3 times that of our population as a whole, despite that, the vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension. No man can fully grasp how far and how fast we have come. This is a breathtaking pace, and such a pace cannot help but create new ills as it dispels old, new ignorance, new problems, new dangers. Surely the opening vistas of space promise high costs and hardships, as well as high reward. So it is not surprising that some would have us stay where we are a little longer, to rest, to wait. But this city of Houston, this state of Texas, this country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rested and wished to look behind them. This country was conquered by those who move forward, and so will space. William Bradford, speaking in 1630 of the founding of the Plymouth Bay Colony, said that all great and honorable actions are accompanied with great difficulties. And both must be enterprised and overcome with answerable courage. If this capsule history of our progress teaches us anything, it is that man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and cannot be deterred. The exploration of space will go ahead, whether we join in it or not. And it is one of the great adventures of all time. And no nation which expects to be the leader of other nations can expect to stay behind in this race for space. Those who came before us made certain that this country rode the first waves of the Industrial Revolution, the first waves of modern invention, and the first wave of nuclear power. And this generation does not intend to founder in the backwash of the coming age of space. We mean to be a part of it. We mean to lead it. For the eyes of the world now look into space, to the moon, and to the planets beyond. And we have vowed that we shall not see it governed by a hostile flag of conquest, but by a banner of freedom and peace. We have vowed that we shall not see space filled with weapons of mass destruction, but with instruments of knowledge and understanding. Yet the vows of this nation can only be fulfilled if we in this nation are first, and therefore we intend to be first. For space science, like nuclear science and all technology, has no conscience of its own. Whether it will become a force for good or ill depends on man. And only if the United States occupies a position of preeminence can we help decide whether this new ocean will be a sea of peace or a new terrifying theater of war. I do not say that we should or will go unprotected against the hostile misuse of space any more than we go unprotected against the hostile use of land or sea. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too. Even though I realize that this is, in some measure, an act of faith and vision, for we do not now know what benefits await us. But if I were to say, my fellow citizens, that we shall send to the moon 240,000 miles away from the control station in Houston, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall, the length of this football field, made of new metal alloys, some of which have not yet been invented, capable of standing heat and stresses several times more than have ever been experienced, fitted together with a precision better than the finest watch, carrying all the equipment needed for propulsion, guidance, control, communications, food, and survival on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth, re-entering the atmosphere at speeds of over 25,000 miles per hour, causing heat about half that on the temperature of the sun, almost as hot as it is here today, and do all this, and do it right, and do it first before this decade is out, then we must be bold.
The future of the space program is right here. It's a project called Orion, and in less than a decade, it will take us to places that we've previously only dreamed about.
When the shuttle program ended, we lost our country's capability to launch astronauts from the surface of the Earth and to bring them back. So right now it's very important to reestablish that current capability.
The Artemis program is pressing forward to the moon, and science is leading the way. We go to inspire generations and to bring home ideas and discoveries that will benefit all of humanity.
A few of the stories to tell you about this week at NASA. During an agency-wide town hall at our headquarters on May 14th, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine and other senior agency leaders discussed the President's proposed amendment to NASA's 2020 budget to support accelerated plans to land astronauts on the moon by 2024.
I think in a very strong vote of confidence for this agency, the administration decided to give us $1.6 billion of new spending. That is, I think, a very strong indicator that this administration is committed to achieving the end state in a bipartisan way.
Under the President's Space Policy Directive 1, we are sending astronauts to the moon and then on to Mars in a measured, sustainable way as part of an innovative program of exploration with commercial and international partners to enable human expansion across the solar system.
When the shuttle program ended, we lost our country's capability to launch astronauts from the surface of the Earth and to bring them back. So right now it's very important to reestablish that current capability.
Program administrators say plans for Orion are substantial, what it calls deep space exploration. First stop is the moon, but they also want to travel to asteroids and eventually make the 140 million mile journey to Mars.
We will build up to Mars, and when we actually travel to Mars, there will be additional elements for humans to live and work on the journey to and from the planet.
How far are we away from that? A long time?
Well, it's not quite as close as I would like, but I think we should see it in the 2030s.
Like the shuttle, Orion was built from the ground up. It has a completely new rocket launch system.
It's a throwback a little bit, right?
In that way it is, yes. When we studied again the kinds of missions we wanted to do and what would be the best shape, we found that the Apollo engineers did their homework, and the shape they picked was the right shape for these sorts of missions.
Those looks are about where Orion's similarities begin and end. Step inside, and it's a completely different beast, designed for completely new generations.
This is the inside of the Orion spacecraft.
Wow.
Wow. You are now in the Orion commander seat.
This is awesome. There's a lot going on up here. This is like 3 iPads on steroids.
But Orion's journey is a long and dangerous one. It must withstand radiation and heat up to 4,000 degrees on re-entry, environments harsher than virtually anything ever encountered by the space program.
Our heat shield is, first of all, it's the largest monolithic heat shield that we've ever built for a human-rated spacecraft that has to come back from this kind of re-entry velocities.
NASA will run additional tests on Orion in 2018. They plan to send it on an unmanned 20-day mission around the moon. But as for its first manned mission, well, they say that's already running ahead of schedule.
Initially, NASA committed to a 2023 date of putting people on Orion. But internally, you're working towards 2021. How viable is that?
Yes. My schedule is to launch humans in 2021. There was margin added to it. So the April 2023 date is a very conservative date and covers a number of contingencies.
I get it. This is like the pad in an airline schedule, isn't it?
Yes.
Meaning that next giant leap for mankind might just be closer than you think.
Just as the United States was the first nation to reach the moon in the 20th century, so too will we be the first nation to return astronauts to the moon in the 21st century. And I'm here on the President's behalf to tell the men and women of the Marshall Space Flight Center and the American people that at the direction of the President of the United States, it is the stated policy of this administration and the United States of America to return American astronauts to the moon within the next 5 years. And let me be clear. The first woman and the next man on the moon will both be American astronauts, launched by American rockets from American soil. The President has directed NASA and Administrator Jim Bridenstine to accomplish this goal by any means necessary. In order to succeed, we must focus on the mission over the means. You must consider every available option and platform to meet our goals, including industry, government, and the entire American space enterprise. History is written by those who dare to dream big and do the impossible.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
And do the impossible.
You have given us a charge today, and it is right on time. And I want to say thank you for that vision and the leadership. Our agency, NASA, is going to do everything in its power to meet that vision, to meet that deadline. And you have my full commitment to achieving that. Well, Mr. Vice President, I can tell you, I am confident we can get to that first launch in 2020 for SLS and actually fly a crew capsule around the moon. We will be using the Gateway as a reusable command module to get boots on the moon as soon as possible. The program is pressing forward to the moon, and science is leading the way. We go to inspire generations and to bring home ideas and discoveries that will benefit all of humanity. To do this, we must better understand the makeup of the moon. We must study areas of the lunar surface where no human or rover has ever been before. Today we announce an initiative that further demonstrates how this effort is unlike any before it. Today, NASA becomes a customer of commercial partners who will deliver our science instruments and our lunar technology to the surface of the moon. This is a crucial step in our ongoing success. NASA is proud to announce that the first commercial payloads to the lunar surface will be provided by Astrobotic, Intuitive Machines, and Orbit Beyond. These companies are prime examples of American ingenuity, vision, and know-how. Because of these landers and the instruments they deliver, the science, technology, and research that will be done in the immediate future will prepare the way for humanity's return to the moon by 2024. We are going.
America will once again astonish the world with the heights we reach, the wonders we achieve, and we will lead the world in human space exploration once again. Now let's get to work.
Many years ago, the great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it. He said, because it is there. Well, space is there, and we're going to climb it. And the moon and the planets are there. And new hopes for knowledge and peace are there. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. Thank you.